So this guy Pete's garage that worked at GM on the cylinder head assembly line as a production coordinator, he told me there's a little tiny ball down in there. This is the piston inside the, this is the old lifter. And there's a clip that holds this in. You gotta take the clip off, and then there's a little cap thingy. That goes in here. And so it looks like that. So you take that, you can see there's a little clip in there. You pry that out. And then you pull that cap, and there's a little plate behind it. And they sit right in here. And then there's a spring inside the lifter. Little hole for where the oil goes in. So here's the problem. All my lifters, that little cap and plate behind it, that are held in by the spring. You gotta actually turn this. It's a little harder with my hand. Okay, so now it's in there with that, and there's a spring behind it. There's the roller that sits on the camshaft. And so, springy, right? That's the way they're supposed to be. Well, if there's fluid inside them, they're not springy. So here's the first brand new one I did. And I would push down on that thing and it wouldn't move at all. Now it's moving because I had to, as I said, take that little clip out of there. Here's the old one again. Take that little clip out of there, get that, this thing with the nice round indentation, that's where the pushrod sits. See, that thing goes into there. And the lifter goes up and down and pushes the pushrod. So that springiness is what you want when you start up the engine. And then the lifter gets pumped up with oil, and that pushes this piston down. And then it only pushes it as far as it needs to, so that there's no slop in the valve train, so that this stuff isn't going ka-clack. This stuff isn't going ka-clack, ka-clack, ka-clack. It's all against each other. That spring and the fluid pressure inside, make sure there's no gaps anywhere in the whole valve train, because you know it goes up to the rocker arm, pushes the rocker arm up, the other end of the rocker arm goes over the other end of the rocker arm goes over to the valve, pushes the valve down. So that's what the hydraulic is all about. But when you start up the engine, if they're solid as a rock all the way open, you got negative valve clearance, and the lift, because they're solid rocks, they're holding the valves open as the gas is going boom, boom, boom. So that here's the valve head smack back into the cylinder head. Nobody mentioned that, but a few guys have talked about what you need to do is free these up. Well, again, from the factory, they're full of oil and they're solid as a rock because it's called hydraulically locked. The fluid inside keeps air from moving around, so the piston can't move up and down. This little piston plunger, whatever. So I have to take the spring out. I have to take the spring out, take that cup and the little round, it's just a flat disc of metal plate behind that. And they come out, and then there's the piston, and I have to pull the piston out and not lose any of that little stuff or drop the little tiny ball that's in there. There's a tiny little check valve ball. Jesus. And pour the oil out of it. So I just did that to this one. Poured the oil into this rag. Put the piston back in, figured out how I can get it back together, because getting that clip back in there is not easy. Although it was much easier on this new one than it was either on the old ones or those rebuilt ones. They're right over there in the box. Anyways, so I got these, I figured out how I can get them back together, get that clip back in there, and now, you can't really see it through the plastic bag, but that's that plunger moving up and down inside the brand new one. 45 minutes ago, you could not push that, and I pushed hard. You take the push rod and you set it in there, and you know, you hold it, and I only got one hand, and you push it. And dude, it didn't matter. You could not move it. And so yeah, that guy Pete's garage says, yeah, he's gotten them brand new from the factory and they're locked up. So he said soak them in solvent overnight, you know. And he said a couple other little things too, like he said pushing the check valve. Well, you have to take it apart to do that to begin with. And it's just easier just to pull the plunger out, pour the extra oil out, and put it back together, because now it works perfect. I know you probably didn't have time to pay attention to this or watch it, but I love you, Bowen. This is the last problem of installing the lifters, which was the last problem of putting the valve train back together. You know, this is as deep in as I went, and I just didn't know what was going on with why won't they move? And so I found a couple videos where the guys say, yeah, you free them up so they can move, because most guys soak them in oil overnight, and they're locked up when they put them in, and they all say, yeah, it's going to clatter a little bit when you start it up. Clatter a little bit. Brand new engine parts just being slammed into each other by the combustion pressure. Nice. That's an aluminum pushrod, by the way. There's one guy I was showing, he got an engine that had 2 bent valves because the lifters were frozen. So, anyways, there it is.